Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Canada Hoops. It's your boy Matty. Thank you for your continued support. Please keep downloading and sharing us. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Our big time guest today is a true legend for Canada basketball. She gets so much love from the Canada basketball family. She represents Mission, British Columbia. She is a former Heritage Park Highlander, Utah Ute, and was drafted 13th overall in the 2006 WNBA draft by the Sacramento Monarchs. And of course, she is regarded as a true GOAT for the senior women's national team for Canada basketball, where she would become a three-time Olympian. Make some noise for Kim Smith-Gaucher. Kim, thanks so much for joining us on Canada Hoops.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we lined it up, and like we talked about briefly before we recorded, super excited, and just anyone you talk to with the program over the years just holds you in such high regard. It's exciting to have you join us, Kim, and I've tried to really follow your career and just the success you've had. So yeah, thanks again, and just how are things? Let our listeners know how you're doing and just where you're at. And I know you're busy with the 3x3 team, but just give an inside look to Kim Smith-Gaucher right now.
Yeah, well, once I stopped playing, I kind of landed like a dream job, being able to coach the number one team in the world. So that's pretty sweet to start off a coaching career with, at the very top. So
Right.
yeah, I've been coaching them and gearing up for Olympic qualifiers here in May and June. So can't wait.
Was the coaching thing something you always thought, you might kind of go down that path? Like I know, I'm sure so many people have approached you, and maybe you're just kind of waiting for the right opportunity. But did you always see yourself in that role?
Yeah, that's funny. So, I mean, near the end of my career, I always kind of viewed myself more as like a player coach. I was always a lot older than a lot of my teammates,
Right.
and I really enjoyed that part of being able to play near the end of my career, where the game kind of slowed down for me, so I could see things, I could point them out to my younger teammates. When I was over in France, I was running workouts for some of like the young and up and coming on our Centre de Formation team. But I always said that I didn't want to just jump into coaching because it's kind of like that's what basketball players do when they're done.
Right.
And I never knew what I wanted to do because like playing basketball was the dream job of all dream jobs. One of the reasons why I extended my career so long, because I was like, this is the coolest job in the world. I don't know if it's going to get any better than this. So I wanted to take some time after I retired to really like suss it out, see if that's really something that I wanted to do. And yeah, when this opportunity came along, I called up Michelle and Catherine Plouffe and I was like, hey, I really want to be your coach. Like, are you guys okay if I become your coach? And
Right.
they were really open and receptive to it. So yeah, I got into it and I'm absolutely loving it. It's been a lot of fun to kind of be able to flex those muscles a little bit more and kind of break down the game even more than I was as a player. So it's been cool.
Yeah, it looks. How do I want to put this? It looks like you're definitely adding, a key piece to the 3x3 team. I think just from kind of watching afar, but haven't talked to like Paige was recently on the podcast, and I think they definitely appreciate having you there, and you just have the experience, and I know you had previous relationship and connections with Michelle and Catherine, so it looks like you're doing a great job, and I mean, like you said, they're the number one team, and what's just kind of, I know you had a little bit of a camp recently here in Calgary. What's been sort of the discussion lately and the mindset looking down the road to qualifiers? Like, how does the team feel? How do you feel? Like, what's the outlook right now?
Yeah, good. I mean, obviously, losing Michelle Plouffe tore her ACL in the last
Right.
2 minutes of our final game in Mongolia. So, we're all kind of like doing what we can to help her along. She has an amazing team and she's insanely driven. So we have no doubt that she's going to get back in time. But one of the cool things that we've been trying to do since the start of this summer, myself with my boss, Ron Young over at Canada Basketball, is build up a bit more of a depth pool in 3x3 because right now we only had those four. we were kind of pushing on them to play a whole bunch of tournaments, and, you know, in the case of injury, but also just to get more players exposure and get more players playing internationally. That's what, you know, Threes offers, is another pipeline and another way to get, you know, to become an Olympian, another way to represent your country. And so we've kind of identified a few more players. And so we're able to have a few more into our training camps, which creates a more competitive environment, but also, again, opens up some more things for more players to be able to put Canada across their chest. So yeah, we've been kind of had a training camp. We have an AmeriCup next week in San Juan, Puerto Rico, the start of December. I don't know when this podcast drops, but ourselves and a men's team is going to go down to be able to represent Canada at AmeriCup. We've already qualified for an Olympic tournament spot that will be up for grabs at the AmeriCup tournament. So we're using it as a real, obviously you always want to win because winning is fun, but we're also using it as a time to really develop and work on some individual skills that we're trying to work on with all of our players.
You know, I like it. And I know just talking with Michael Bartlett, right, the CEO, and he's super pumped about just having as much Canada basketball in Paris as possible. Obviously, the senior men's team is there, and I mean, I think we're all pretty confident the senior women's national team is going to get there, and then this group that you're coaching as well, and then the goal to add a men's group. So it's going to be an incredible Olympics next summer. I have no doubt that a lot of representation will be there. So we're looking forward to supporting that. And Kim, I'm hoping we can just go back a little bit. You know, tell me about a younger you running around Mission, and obviously the basketball story goes deep. But I'm just curious if you played other sports, and just talk about you know, that young person running around.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a middle child, so I was really lucky to have an incredible older sister, Michelle, who I followed around and tried to emulate everything that she did. So we played a lot of sports growing up. You know, there was softball, soccer, cross country, volleyball, all kind of the normal sports. Basketball and soccer were definitely by far my two favorite. And I kind of wound up at a more basketball school. So I think that was sort of the route that I followed. I fell in love with it. You know, we had always grown up playing outside. We had a light outside, you know, so we could play in our driveway until late in the night. And my sister also was an avid sports person, you know, and wound up going to university at the University of Texas Pan American, got a D1 scholarship, kind of back in the day when a lot of Canadians were not going down.
For sure.
And so she has always been a huge role model for me. Kind of taught me a lot of little nuances and things to do. So yeah, we sort of ran around doing all kinds of sports. When I got to high school, I stuck with mainly just cross country and basketball. By the time I hit grade 10, I had kind of, cross country was my early season thing. I just kind of stopped playing volleyball in grade 9 and just did cross country and hoops. I always loved to run. Although, funny story, when I got in the WNBA, I always still loved to run. Like going for like a long jog was just like a calming, soothing thing for me. I never had problems with cardio.
Right.
And my coach was like, hey, you need to stop working so much of your slow twitch muscle fibers. So you're not allowed to go on long runs anymore. Only sprint workouts from here on out. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. You kind of don't like, it's funny you bring that up because you don't see a lot of like pro basketball players really do that. And I remember like seeing people do that, like we're around the same age. Like I remember people doing that at a high level when they're playing basketball, and I was kind of thinking like that's kind of crazy. Like I see NBA guys be running like 10Ks and as training. I was like, man, like you're running all the time. But I just wonder, like you mentioned your sister, obviously a role model. Did you have anybody else in terms of basketball that you really looked up to that maybe in your community or whatever, a pro level that you really admired? Like whose game did Kim really like?
Yeah, I mean, you know, growing up like pre-YouTube days and stuff, basketball wasn't really on TV in Canada.
Right.
And so for me, a lot of it was my sister. But then I always tell people that like my life path changed. And in grade 10, I had an incredible high school basketball coach. Bruce Langford was just the absolute like genius when it came to basketball and teaching it at a young age. And he pulled us out of school and he took us to Richmond, BC to watch the women's national team. The Canadian women's national team was practicing there, and we got to go to practice. And it was the first time in my life that I was exposed to this. Like, I was like, oh, you can play professional basketball. Like you don't have that exposure when you don't ever see it, when it's not on TV. And the athletes all came and talked to us. And one of the cool things is that one of the players who was on the team, Teresa Kleindienst-Gabriel, is from Mission, BC. And so she was always somebody, she used to come back. We would have these epic Sunday runs where, there would be like 30 people that came back to play pickup at Heritage Park. And she used to come back. And so it was always, I had her to see. I could see what it took, be able to play with her, play against her. So that was always something that was huge for me. But yeah, I think, once you see something, I think it's huge for, especially at a young age, to be able to see professional women's basketball players, to be able to talk to them, to hear that, you could do it.
Yeah, Teresa was sometimes her name's come up a little bit on the podcast, but maybe gets a little lost in the mix in terms of, some of the greats. She played a lot with Stacey Dales. I think about Stacey, back then too, and those Olympic teams. And you talk about Heritage Park, Kim, like an amazing career there. Obviously, I'm not from that province, but I've really tried to follow players from there. And I know Howard Samura and his coverage of the hoops, and he's referenced you in the past as maybe the best player in BC high school history. You were the best player on the best teams and what he deemed the best era. How much like you mentioned, it's pre-YouTube and whatnot, but how much did you really try to stay kind of locked in and focused and grounded when, like, obviously, you're a very good player at that level and that age, but, and you're starting to field, recruitment, but how do you just kind of go about balancing perhaps being a normal kid in a way, but also, achieving dreams and pursuing this, this passion?
Yeah. I was always pretty driven and hardworking. And like I said, once I saw that exposure to, like, you could be a professional women's basketball player, and my sister, once she had gone to the US to play, I used to go, the gym was opened up for us every single morning at Heritage Park by our coaches, Frank Chan and Bruce Langford, like 6 a.m. And I never missed a morning because I was just like, this is what I want. This is what I want to get to. But when I was in going into grade 11 or grade 10, I don't know, there was junior national team, and it was really hard as an athlete from BC to get invites to training camps and things that were going on in Toronto. There's just like, there wasn't anything. It was Mike and Allison McNeil that eventually developed, this, they've changed names a million times, but it was like the regional training center when it first started, to try to help identify talent and get the top talent in each province working together, and kind of get a system and style of play. But so I had some teammates that actually got invited to junior national team tryouts. So I was never even felt like, I was one of the best players on my team. I always felt like I needed to, there was so much work to get better, and I was being pushed so well in my environment. And then, so I just kind of was like on the grind. I had goals that I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to become an Olympian. That was like the ultimate dream for me. And, going into my grade 12 year, that was a summer that I got invited for my first junior national team. And, it had been like 2 years of really hoping that I could get there and seeing teammates get invited to camps, seeing other people from other provinces getting invited to camps, but never really getting that chance to show what I could do. And that first summer when I finally got invited in, I had a good summer. And I think I know it was because of my work ethic, and, just kind of willingness. I always wanted to be the first one in the gym and kind of the last one to leave, that I got invited into the senior camp later that summer. Wow. Under Bev Smith, and got invited to join the senior national team. definitely not as one of the top 12 players in the country. Like, I remember getting just absolutely roasted on defense, like, a couple of times. There was, like, this player, she didn't wind up making the team that summer, but she would just, like, spin, like, catch the ball and just, like, reverse pivot on me and just, like, go for a wide open layup. I was like, "Oh my goodness." Like, just defense
Who
really grows as you get older, especially if you're on, like, the less athletic side and you become a lot smarter. So, yeah,
right.
young
Who
Kim
would it who
was
who would have been on those teams at that period
at
of
that age.
time? Like,
I mean, Diane Norman was the big
right,
one. She
right,
was, whew, yeah, she was very, very good. Yeah, and then it was the Claudia Broussards, the Teresa Gabriel, Nikki Johnson.
right,
Those are
okay.
kind of some of the big names. They were huge mentors to me. Really helped kind of instill a lot of things in me, and I feel like showed me a lot on how to become a good leader and what it means to represent Canada in this program.
Awesome. And I know, like, listen, in 2001, 2002, you were the AAA tournament MVP at provincials. Tremendous career. Like, you know, in that article Howard had put out kind of during the pandemic, like they had done a list. I'm not sure if you saw it. They did a men's and a women's list in terms of all-time great players in the province, and
Hmm.
you're at the top. And just if you look on both sides, men's and women's, the history out of BC, truly incredible. We've had some of the people join us, and we're grateful for that. And I just think it just speaks volumes to your impact and your career, especially as you went along, and 3-time Olympian, and captain of the national team. And I enjoyed reading it. I encourage, if people are listening, obviously, to check it out and Google it. It's really cool. And obviously your recruitment's picking up for college, university at the next level. Like, what did that look like, Kim? And who were you getting offers from, and who did you start taking seriously? And just tell me about navigating that process.
Yeah, so I would say that the the ones that I took really seriously was Utah, obviously.
Right,
A junior national team teammate and good friend of mine, Shona Thorburn, had committed there the year before. Obviously, there was kind of a string of Canadians that had really good careers there. Amy Ewart, Erin Gibbons, Catherine McCall, and then Shona was down there and loved it. Incredible coach. And then it came down to, for me, my final two was Oregon, which was really difficult. That was Bev Smith was a head coach, and then Mike and Allison McNeil
right,
were the assistants. So they were people that I had a really, really great relationship with, had already played for. Allison on the junior national team, Bev on the senior. Mike was a high school teacher of mine. But I went on official visits, and one of the things that my older sister told me to do, and was probably the best piece of advice that I ever got, was to play pickup with both teams. Because, you can watch practices, coaches can say what they want to do. But I wanted to be able to play pickup and see. I always felt like I knew myself and I knew my game really well. I had a style of play that wasn't going to fit in everywhere. And when I played pickup, I was like, at Utah, it was just like people were calling out screens. They were, it was a really kind of like a fun motion offense that they were playing. And I felt that right away in pickup. And I didn't get that same feeling at Oregon. And it was probably the hardest decision because I really wanted to go to Oregon because it was Bev and Mike and Al. And I
right.
liked them a lot. But it was only their first or second year there. So I knew that it was going to take a while to turn that program around. And I knew that my style of play really didn't fit in with what they had on the court at that time. And so I chose to go to Utah, which turned out to be a great decision for me. Had a really successful 4 years and grew a ton under, one of the women that I consider one of the greatest coaches I've ever had in Elaine Elliott.
Yeah, I mean, you look at your Utah stats and notes. You're like Mountain West Conference Player of the Year in all 4 of your seasons. Like, first woman to have her jersey number retired by the University of Utah. I mean, to say, iconic career there is understated, right? I think, um, it just I look at that and just kind of seeing your career and just okay, it's another level and in the trajectory to what made you so great. Did you like? It's funny you mentioned the pick. I wanted to ask you about the pickup runs there because I've had other guests say that too, and that was like, yeah, this is kind of how I knew because I could see kind of where I fit in.
Hmm.
Given how the college landscape has changed so much with NIL, and I just wonder like if a young athlete or a player even maybe has that mindset now to do something like that, where it's like the recruiting is just almost out of control, and it's like, well, I can make X amount in NIL here. Like, do you think?
Hmm.
Have you had any conversations with maybe like young players that you've come across about just navigating that? I'm wondering just like
Yeah, I mean, it's so different right now,
right,
and I think it's so easy to get swept up by what you're presented.
right,
I mean, schools are doing so much now with even just their facilities and the food and the way that you're going to get treated. But I feel like at the end of the day, if there's a gym that's open to you whenever you need it, it doesn't need to have its own private hot tubs or things like that. I think it's really difficult, but it's something that, especially as Canadians, we have to try to keep in mind. If your ultimate goal is to be on the national team, which is something that we need to like almost change in this country. I think when you ask across the board young female hockey players or soccer players what their ultimate dream is, it's going to be to win a medal and to represent Canada. And I think right now, when you ask young female basketball players across this country, you're going to get a very and myriad of answers like, I want to, get a scholarship, or I want to play in the WNBA. And it's just like, we need like the national team. There's no greater honor than being able to rep Canada. I'm telling you, I've done it at a lot of different levels, and it is the coolest thing and the greatest thing that you can ever do.
right.
And so we want, young players to dream of that. And if that is your ultimate goal, then you kind of might need to go to a place where, maybe the practice facility isn't as nice, but you're going to fit in better. You're going to get more minutes. And in the long term, you're going to benefit from that. And you're going to be able to have a longer career internationally and with Canada, as opposed to, although if you can make millions in NIL deals, then I'm not gonna tell you to turn that down.
Yeah, the landscape is so different. I mean, like they got to find a balance. I think between maybe some of those needs and wants, and then long term with career. And I think in some ways, and maybe you can speak better to this. Like it seems as of late, um, the people running the senior women's national team have found a way to sort of keep sort of the high prospects in NCAA involved, whether it's bringing them to camps or even traveling. If like Aaliyah Edwards has played a little bit with the women's national team, still finding a balance between her time at UConn and some of the players like that, right? So I think some of them still see the importance, if you will, of playing for the national team, but yeah, the NIL landscape is so different, and I think about some like yourself or some of the past guests that have joined us, where their college careers were so good that if NIL had been a factor back then, what would that look like for someone's career, just in terms of marketing or however you want to look at it, right? It's just it's really different, and uh, Kim, you're wrapping up at Utah, and I'm curious, like how does the WNBA start to be on the radar or reality? Like you're getting a sense of like I'm gonna be drafted. Like just take us through that, and because not every female player when they turn pro gets that opportunity necessarily, and you were kind of one of the first ones in a sense. Just take me through that and how you started to kind of feel that the draft process. So
Yeah. So heading into my senior year, I started, you know, having agents contact me, letting me know, that like I was on radars, that there's GMs at practices and stuff like that. And both my teammates, Shona Thorburn and I, we were told that we were going to be drafted. And then before the draft, we both got invited to attend the draft. And they said, like most likely this means that you're going in the first round or early second round. So for me, that was super nerve-wracking.
Right.
I feel like I would have preferred to like watch it in an intimate environment than, to be like.
Where was the draft? Your draft year?
It was in Boston. So they paired
cool.
it up with the Final Four. And that senior year, we lost in overtime of the Elite Eight. So we had like just missed out on the Final Four. And yeah, flew to Boston the week of the Final Four to attend the draft. My husband makes fun of me to this day because there's still like some draft pictures that circulate. And I had like the worst ill-fitting suit one could ever have. I don't know what I was thinking. I needed a better fashion advisor in my life back then.
Do you still have the suit or what?
Oh goodness, no. The suit was like long been thrown out. It was like probably 5 sizes too big. Just, like bought it in an outlet store, just like, all right, let's do this, and then you look at now, like I always like look at when like Nat and Kia wore to the draft and I'm like, oh yeah, same,
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, that picture gets circulated every once in a while and I'm like, oh shoot,
I haven't seen it, and I won't look for it.
Yeah, you don't have to look for it. Yeah. Yeah, so I was pretty nervous. My husband came, and his family is from Connecticut, so they came out. My parents had been flying out for the whole NCAA tournament. This is like back in the day when they didn't fly families out with the NCAA, so they didn't fly out for the draft. My coaches were there, and then obviously my teammate Shona, who was drafted, I think 7th, so that was pretty cool. And then I was the last pick in the first round. But yeah, I would say it was just like you didn't really get a chance, or my personality, I didn't get a chance to like soak in the experience or the environment because I was just like a ball of nerves. It's not like university where you get to dictate and choose.
Right.
And it's kind of like somebody's choosing for you, and where you wind up, it's sort of like, well, I hope you fit in there kind of thing. So yeah, I wound up on a very good team in Sacramento and learned a lot. Yeah.
Was it, I guess at the draft and knowing by that point you're getting drafted, but, was it a conversation of like a dream realized for sure? Like, you think back to, playing at Heritage Park and going to see the senior women's national team and like, I can do this as a pro. And like, did you get a chance to maybe just sit back and reflect and soak it in? Like, yeah, this is my dream realized. Like, I'm going to play professionally. Was there moments like that?
Yeah. It's funny because the WNBA was never like this is my dream kind of thing. And whenever I said like, I'm going to play professionally, I think because it was my exposure that I had been around people that played overseas, that I always, liked to travel. So I was like, well, that's going to be, where I play professionally, and less so the WNBA. So I was never like, oh, I've arrived, at that point in time, I had already missed out. Like we didn't qualify in 2004 for Athens. I didn't qualify in 2002 for the World Championships. And so for me, it was more like getting Canada to an Olympics. That was my ultimate dream, and not as much being able to be like, oh, I'm in the WNBA. That was more just like, well, this is kind of cool. This will be a fun experience.
And obviously like a ton of players like now still like they'll, play WNBA and go overseas, right, to supplement income. And there's been lots of conversations about, players not getting, paid enough. And I know it's getting a little better with some of the travel and the exposure, but, I think that's like other players that I've talked to, obviously they've always enjoyed overseas because I think naturally as Canadians, maybe we sort of embrace it. Most of us do like to travel and explore new cultures. So I've always found that interesting where players really embrace that overseas, even though they have played in the WNBA or the NBA or whatever, right? So they find a way to really enjoy their time. And I know you played a little bit in Spain, but most of your career in France in the league there. What the league in France is an exceptional league for women's professional basketball. What made it so great for you? Just your time there and your experience, because I know other players have loved playing there. But just give us your thoughts on playing in France.
Yeah, I mean, I have to give a shout out to Liz Ann Murphy because she like opened up France for Canadians.
Right.
It's interesting. It was almost hard early in my career for a lot of Canadians to get overseas because we used to have like the FIBA Americas tournament would play so late, and so teams, you don't have the luxury of having a European passport. Like you're considered a North American,
Right.
and so teams would just be like, yeah, we're not going to go with this Canadian. So people really had to kind of like grind in leagues that weren't as good and didn't pay as well. And yeah, Liz Ann had like one exceptional season in France, and all of a sudden they were like, "Oh, Canadians are good. Like we want more Canadians." They work hard. A lot of them can kind of speak the language. So thanks to her, yeah, I think my time in France was great because one, my husband was over with me, which it felt like your whole family is there,
Right.
kind of thing. And then two, I had a really great coach there who understood that I was an older player. And so he didn't, you can get in situations where if you're injured, there's kind of a lot of pressure to still play. You get in situations where you're practicing a whole ton. And he was really great with me. He was kind of like, what do you, like I was heading into the Rio Olympics and he was kind of like, well, what do you need? Like, how can I help support you to get to this next level? And you don't always have that. So that was really cool and kind of became like a bit of a second home there in Normandy. So I ended up staying there quite a while. My husband was really set up as a coach there as well. So yeah, I think that's sort of what made me stay. Also, France is great because your contract is guaranteed. So if you get hurt, if you get injured, if they don't like the way you're playing, they can't cut you, which is obviously really nice. And, business where sometimes your paycheck just doesn't arrive. That would never happen in that country.
No, that's great, and you made a great point where the coach is supportive, the team is supportive in terms of they know you or other players are gonna do national team duties and support that through the summers, right? And you don't always necessarily see that. Teams aren't always necessarily keen on it, but no, it's cool, and then, like anyone else I've talked to that has played there really enjoyed it. They highly recommend it, and I know the basketball, like Kayla Alexander's playing there right now, and seems to be enjoying it, is what she's told us. And
yeah,
so clearly, like you're in the WNBA too, in France, stop in Spain, but is it safe to say France was kind of your favorite place that you played?
Yeah, I mean, I really was lucky. Like when people ask me my favorite spot that I played, I was like I played in Ibiza, Spain.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's not a bad gig.
Yeah.
Like Belgium is a really great country because your furthest away game is like an hour and a half. Hungary turned out to be like a surprisingly really cool city, and when you get paid in euros and you're like buying things in a forint, I mean, you feel like you're a millionaire, which is kind of fun for a couple months.
Right.
But yeah, so I really feel like all of my experiences, I lucked out. Yeah, I mean, France kind of felt like home. I think the greatest thing about France was that I could speak French, and by the end I got pretty close to,
Fluent.
bilingual, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably the greatest thing because it makes life a lot easier outside of the basketball court. Obviously, everywhere you go, people can speak a little bit of English on the court, but it's outside of the court if you can easily go to, restaurants or go to movies. You kind of feel like you're leading a normal life when you can speak the language.
No, nice. And you made a mark there, and you talked about Lisanne kind of paving the way, and now perhaps you've opened doors for Canadian players over there, and that's cool to see. Kim, obviously here on Canada Hoops, we love to talk Canada basketball, especially with guests. who have played for the program, which you have obviously done. Um, I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but just for you personally, like your career with the red and white national team, and now you're coaching the 3x3 team. Like, what does you've had probably time to kind of sit back and reflect. What does that mean to you? Just to be a three-time Olympian, represent the program so well, be a captain, be someone that um, your peers and teammates have just shown so much love to, and just really appreciated. Like, just give us a sense of what all that really means to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been, the greatest honor anytime that you could wear the red and white, like in Canada across your chest. It doesn't get much better than that. That was always the highlights of my career. I loved going back. Some of my best friends, are ones that I played with throughout the summer.
Right.
Made a ton of incredible memories with, grinded through a lot. I think I take a lot of pride in the fact that, myself and kind of a group of players and Alison McNeil as the head coach sort of got the program back to where it had been before. Obviously we had some really great success in the early 80s and late. And then I was on the team, that didn't qualify for Athens, Beijing,
Right.
but broke a 12-year drought and qualified for our first World Championships in 2006. And then obviously breaking through and qualifying for London was an iconic moment and the all-time highlight of my career. I always wanted to step on a podium, never got that chance, but being able to bring the program back to becoming where, qualifying for World Cups and Olympics is almost like second nature, and it's just supposed to happen. I think that's really, really cool.
No, well said. And I think you hit it on the head in terms of really taking the program back to where it was, and really showing the way for the next wave of players. And if you think about 2012 and now up to next summer, 2024, I mean, I have no doubt the senior women's national team will be there. And, yourself and so many others have just sacrificed and committed, to really, raise the program and make it a world power, if you will. I'm wondering, I want to ask you about the Olympics. Just if you can, just kind of give us a sense of, just you're an Olympian, start in London first time. You're a three-time Olympian now. What's how do you balance the Olympic experience for you? Trying to enjoy it, like I'm at the Olympics, I am an Olympian, take in other sports, but also to stay locked in on your games, on your competition. Like, how do you balance that experience out?
Yeah. Um, I I think you're so driven. And then there's always like a little bit of time at the end where you can enjoy it. Basketball does it's one of the only sports that spans the full length of the
Right,
Olympics. But
right,
in general, you're able to have time at like the last day or two where you can kind of take it all in. But I think it's just being in the village that, it's pretty easy to stay focused when you're around a group of people. I would say myself personally, I did, kind of the best job of staying in the moment in London. It was the first time and everything was new. And so I think I was really like in the moment in that one because everything was fun and exciting. Whereas Rio, it was like, that was a group that, really we should have medaled and came up short. And so that one was tougher because you knew what our potential was. And so it was almost like you were waiting to like get to the
right.
next game, to get to the middle round. So maybe you did like less of a job of staying in the moment. And then what's really hard is when you do underachieve at these Olympics, when you come home empty handed, when you had your sights set on a medal, it's like, it's like a bit of a depression that you come back with, and, you're left with that kind of loss and that kind of void, knowing that you only get these opportunities every 4 years. And so when you do underachieve, it's pretty like all encompassing, kind of like a guilt and, dread. And, it can be motivating in that you you want to get back in the gym right away because you want to do it better. But
Right.
really like depressing that you can't do it better for another 4 years.
No, I mean, great insight. I think like maybe that's something that people don't realize, right? I mean, only uh, the players and people at that level are gonna sort of appreciate that, right? I think like um, there's a lot of time and commitment and sacrifice to get there, qualify, compete, and you're kind of maybe looking
Mhm.
back the last 4 years, like, man, what could I have changed? But I think
Yeah,
if
it's really
if
just
there's a young player listening and they're like, wow, this is what it's actually like, right? Like that's um, not everyone you work hard to be one of the 12 to make the national team and go to the Olympics, right? And there's a lot to be
Mhm.
said about that. But yeah, no, that's great. I hope anyone listening appreciates that, right? Like that's um, maybe something people don't consider,
Yeah, you have to have a little bit of luck to
right?
get a medal at the Olympics. You got to get hot at the right time. You got to be, there's a lot of things that have to go right. And I know that they will for Canada basketball in the future. I know that there will be a time when, there's medals. Hopefully it's in Paris. There's a whole bunch of
Right.
teams with medals, but yeah, it takes a lot. It takes a lot to get there, and then it takes a lot to get to that next level.
What were the conversations like? I've asked guests this. Obviously, you got the country on the front, but you work hard to be one of the 12 and put your family's name on the back. And there should be a lot of pride with that as well, obviously. And what have those conversations been like for you and your family over the, oh my gosh, almost 20 years you nearly represented the program? Like, just you know, take me through that for your parents, your siblings. Like, what are those conversations like to sit down with the people that helped get you there? And just curious to hear what that was like for you and your family.
Yeah, I mean, those were probably the most fun calls to make, after we qualified for London. I remember being on the bus. My husband flew to Turkey with me. My family had actually already bought tickets to London. They were coming to the Olympics and they were like, my goodness, I hope you qualify.
Right.
Because you do qualify so late. And, to be able to call them and tell them, like, well, obviously they were watching the game, but to be able to like revel in their excitement because it does like this takes a village. I don't
Right.
become an Olympian on my own. I mean, obviously you have your team on the court and the people that help you, your coaches, but anybody that's an Olympian has like, a crazy support system outside of that because it is all encompassing this drive to become an Olympian, to get to the top. I mean, it's required my family's, rebounding for me for over the years. I mean, maybe they're only serving certain things at dinners. Like I mean, it's not just my goal and dream; it's like the goal and dream of my entire family's. And they understand that there's going to be seasons where I'm all in and can't give as much of my undivided attention as I would want to them, but they understand that because they're just as invested. So I think
Right.
it's pretty cool to know that we all made it essentially, and it's been amazing that they were able to come to both London and Rio.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you. I know for 2020 Tokyo, which obviously you didn't get played that year, the following year, but you had to really speak up and battle against the IOC to allow nursing mothers to bring their kids. Just talk about that if you can. Just obviously it was important to you, but I'm sure you've helped you know moms down the road to be able to do it as well. And obviously the pandemic was a different situation, but just take us inside that if you can a little bit, and just obviously why it mattered to you.
Yeah, I mean that was obviously a really exhausting time trying
Right.
to get back to that level physically, while you know caring for a newborn. So
Right.
again, I look back to my family who were writing emails and appealing and reaching out to people. I think it mattered um, because people were asking me to kind of choose. Do you want to be a mother or do you want to be an athlete? And that's something that no females should ever have to choose between. And I think it struck a chord. Obviously I have an incredibly supportive team. They were all helping me get my message and word out kind of as a last ditch attempt. And the messages that poured in, obviously there were some, like kind of wildly negative, but
Right.
95% of them, were incredibly supportive. And I was like inundated with stories of women in the business world who, had felt this same kind of pull and the same kind of thing that had happened. And it sort of like, kind of like rejuvenated me, and made me realize that this wasn't just a basketball specific thing. It's still something that people talk to me about this day, that it's important, it's important that stories like this get out. It's important that, if people can you can't just hide behind the pandemic and say, oh, well, it's just because of the pandemic. It's like, yes, but businesses and corporations have done this to, mothers and been like, oh, well, it's just because of this that you can't have a private nursing room, like use the bathroom, or, like,
Right.
it's just because of this that you can't have this promotion, And so I think that was something that was really huge for me personally, to be able to read those stories and to realize that hopefully you can help make a difference. It was exhausting, definitely. I wish that it didn't have to happen, and I didn't have to go about it that way. But I'm thankful that in the end it worked out, and I was able to have them there, to be able to experience the Olympics. Obviously, that was a really, really discouraging one. We were a team that in 2020 at those Olympic qualifiers in Belgium would have medaled, had the Olympics kind of rolled in, and then, a whole year later and quarantines and all, different injuries, and kind of like the timing wasn't on our side in Tokyo.
Yeah, it was a difficult situation for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But if you talk about the games themselves and the team, the things weren't lining up very well, and just and just back real quick to what you advocated for, to allow moms to bring their kids in that situation. I'm glad the support was there, and I'm glad it worked out. Super important, and that it matters, right? And I think that's going to
Mm-hmm.
be something that people can draw back on to reference. So like, look at, this is what did happen, and thankfully it was the right thing. And I just want to just a couple more things about the national team, Kim. You got
Mm-hmm.
teammates. You spent so many years with the program. Teammates that really stand out for you, that you obviously grew close with from your time in the program, and maybe a couple squads that um, maybe do stand out for you as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first one that, like, squad that stands out would maybe be 2010. It was the summer of our 40-day training camp at University of the Fraser Valley in Abbotsford.
Wow.
Those who have been out there know that there's not a lot to do. It's a pretty bit of a more of a like a rural, remote campus. And
Yeah,
we
it is.
walked this like little triangle from unair conditioned dorms. We're in the middle of like a hot streak of like 32 degrees
Right.
in Abbotsford, over to the gym, and then to like the cafeteria. Well, it wasn't even a cafeteria because they didn't have a cafeteria open. It was like a small room where we would eat, and then back. And it was 40 days. We put in a whole new offense. It was like Alison McNeil was like, this is how we're going to qualify for London. Like, we need you guys to buy in. And I remember, like, on the last day of that camp, it ended 2 days early. And there was actually like tears. Like, we always make fun of Natalie Achonwa because she was actually crying like tears of joy because we were going to be able to fly home 2 days early, because at the
Nice.
end of 40 days, like, that's what it is. We didn't, I think like Chile came to play us for 2 games at the end of it, but it was like most of it was just us like grinding, and like Mike and Al were pushing us hard. Like, we had numbers on the wall of like 1 through 20 for like turnovers and missed layups, and they would rip one down every time we had a turnover or a missed layup, like, for the day.
Right.
And anything over top of that, we were like running sprints. So it was also like not, I mean, pro practices, like, you don't really do that kind of stuff, but this was like going back to like grinding university days where, like, there's severe punishment. So we would run like time sprints, and, like, it was just it was this wild grind that did, turn out very successfully in 2012, but it was a lot to kind of put in and pave the way.
Nice.
Teammates, I would say, yeah, it was like there was this group of us that I'll always remember there was Lizanne Murphy, Tamara Tatum, and then they called themselves the Rags to Riches crew because they came from an open tryout and made the senior national team. And I think it was 2007 maybe, and we were trying to qualify for the Beijing Games. And we didn't qualify. And she was like, well, we just all need to get a lot better, don't we? And I was like, yeah, that is kind of what it comes down to.
Right.
So there was kind of a group of, there was the Teresa Gabriel, the Chelsea Aubry, Alicia and Tamara Tatum, Zan Murphy. I'm probably forgetting some other people, but that just like really committed to doing whatever it took. And whether that meant either, there are summers where I didn't go overseas because I needed to rest up my body and recover and work out on my own. For some people, it was like, well, I need to get into this league because that's where I'm going to get better competition, even if it means taking a pay cut.
Right.
And so there's kind of a really special group of people there under the guide of Allison and LT that sort of did whatever it took to get this squad back to London and back to the Olympics, which is pretty memorable for me.
Do you stay pretty? I imagine you do, but you must stay pretty locked in on the current national team. Just what do you enjoy about this group that seems to be playing really well? We got, if you look at the veterans on that team now with Kia and Natalie, Bridget,
Mm-hmm.
and I know you have a relationship with all of them, but just give us some thoughts maybe on that group and the outlook for them, and just what you as a former teammate and a veteran and a legend of the program, like what do you enjoy about the team right now?
Yeah, it's so much fun to watch them. I always say Nat is one of the smartest post players you could ever have. She just really sees the game so well and does so many things great. And it's been so much fun to watch, like both her and Kia, they both started when they were, babies. So you feel like you've watched them grow up and you've seen their games grow. And, Kia, when she first came in, like it was the amount of growth that she has to now, obviously she started as a high schooler, but it's just been really cool to see, not just on the court, but off the court as well, the kind of leaders that they've turned into, and then Bridget at the world, in 2018 at the World Championships, like she barely played. And then, the next World Championship, she's an all-star. So it's pretty cool to be able to watch that. I think they're getting into a groove. I think they're really committed and they're really looking forward to it. I love watching them play. I love hitting them up.
Nice.
Seeing how things are going in camps and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been cool.
Awesome. Kim, do you have a top 5 or favorite 5 of all time for Canada basketball? And I just want to let the listeners know, like, to give you some reference, there isn't probably a guest that's played for the women's national team that has joined us that hasn't put Kim in there. So no pressure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love to hear your 5, whether it's
that could be a recency bias. I don't know. Okay, good. So this is very hard.
I know.
I'm not saying that they have to have been retired for a few years. They can't be playing now.
Okay, I like.
Yeah, I'm gonna start. I have to start with Bev Smith because I'm a BC girl, and I have seen some of her old game films. My first year on the national team, I got to play her one-on-one, which was pretty cool. And her records like still stand at Oregon, like she was just feel like if you go to Italy and you mention the name Bev Smith, they're still all going to know her. She was just an absolute stud. Second one would be Sylvia Sweeney, MVP at a World Cup.
Well done.
I actually got to meet her for the first time last year, and I was like, you don't know me, but like I have heard a lot of stories about you, and you are amazing.
I'm sure she knows you.
Well, yeah, but I mean, who knows,
Yeah.
So, but
Right.
I was
Yeah.
like, I felt like I was meeting somebody, that like you had heard about all growing up. Um, then, so some of the other ones, I would say Teresa Gabriel for me, in it was 2005, she hit a running right-handed hook shot, which she's a lefty. She hit a running last second right-handed hook shot against Argentina that clinched us a berth in the next year's World Championships. And that was going to be the first World Championships that Canada had been to in 12 years. So,
Awesome.
I think during her career, she was able to break 2 12-year droughts there. And yeah, I think just somebody that did a lot for the national team, and sort of, kind of had her. I put her in the same sort of category as, Tammy Sutton Brown, and
For
Stacey
sure.
Dale, as people that were in like the primes of their careers when Canada was probably at its lowest.
Right.
I remember playing with Stacey, and yeah, we weren't always very good during those years. And same thing with Tammy. Unfortunately, their careers kind of didn't line up with when they got to do the Sydney Olympics. But yeah, if only 2004 and 2008, they should have been there, kind of leading the charge. But yeah, we didn't maybe have the things built up around them. So those, and then I might have to like Diane Norman as well,
Nice.
somebody who playing with her and like her footwork in the post was absolutely exceptional. Like I feel like young kids should watch some old film of her. So I think that would
Awesome.
be my squad.
Oh, great
It's
squad. I
6,
mean,
but pretty
no,
close.
no, I mean, like, listen, it's you know better than anyone, and in terms of program history, like those are big time names and big time players, and I think most of our guests will probably know them, but if not, get on the Google and check it out. And I mean, definitely some players that maybe get lost in the fold don't get enough respect. So I always enjoy, hearing a guest take and who their five is. Kim, anyone you'd like to see join us on Canada Hoops with a real good Canada basketball story? We're always looking for more connections and more guests.
Oh, well, I would say Bev Smith because that's somebody who,
For sure.
transitioned from player to coach, coached at Olympics.
Right.
Yeah. And yeah, the coaches, Alison McNeil, I always say that she does not get enough recognition for what she did for basketball in this country. Some of the stuff that she put in place has been pretty exceptional.
Right.
So yeah,
I like
those
it.
two. Yeah.
Any shout outs? Thank you before I get you out of here. And again, it's been a pleasure to have you join us and, follow your career and support you. But anyone you wanna thank?
Man, like all my teammates over the years, like that's what makes going back to Canada basketball always so much fun. It's impossible to mention them all, but yeah, there's some really cool women who have represented this country, and it's been a blast getting to know them and being able to be connected to them through this.
Awesome. Well, we want to wish you all the best, and we're looking forward to seeing you in Paris next summer, coaching the 3x3 team, and not we got to put the vibes out there. We know it's going to happen, but yeah, thanks again, Kim, and looking forward to more success for you with Canada basketball.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. That's a wrap on another episode of Canada Hoops. I want to thank the legend Kim Smith-Gaucher for pulling up. Thank you for listening. Remember to rate and review us wherever you get your podcast. Keep supporting Canada basketball and our Canadian Hoopers, and we will see you on the next episode.